I thought this would be an appropriate topic for post-Easter. Some of the songs we sang at worship this morning were remembering and reflecting, and Tom's communion pre-talk was just highlighting what Jesus did on the cross for us, what happened on the Friday, and then we had the benefit of knowing how the story continues on the Sunday. So new seasons. Bit of a plug for Spot Fires, which is on this Thursday. Spot Fires is for all ages. Okay? So we admire the strength of youth and respect the grey hair of age. And as you can see from a Gary Larson comic, how one possible repercussion of bringing the young with the old. But Spot Fires is for all ages, so please don't think it is just for young people, or I'm not young enough, because we're all young, okay? We're all young. We're all young enough to come to Spot Fires. I want to be focusing on the passage that I have on the screen now, Matthew 9, verses 16 to 17, and it's about the new and the old wineskins. I'm going to read it. Then we're going to give a bit of sort of talk about it. Sorry, I'm just going to have to go with my spectacles. No one patches up an old coat with a piece of new cloth, for the new patch will shrink and make an even bigger hole in the coat. Nor does anybody pour new wine into used wineskins, for the skins will burst, the wine will pour out, and the skins will be ruined. Instead, new wine is poured into fresh wineskins, and both will keep in good condition. Now, I've often read that and thought, yeah, whatever, so you can see from the jacket that's there, you try and patch it up and it doesn't have that same look. When I was young, one of my first toys was a teddy bear, and did not look like Winnie the Pooh, but I called it Pooh Bear anyway. And I still have my Pooh Bear, but he does not look anything like what he was when he was first given to me, because my mum has gone and patched it up, and he's got an eye missing and he's got a button for the other eye and all that sort of thing. But he's still my Winnie the Pooh Bear that I had for years and years. So we're not talking about that sort of thing. But I've puzzled over this and thought, yeah, what does it mean? What does it mean? Thanks for sharing, but what does that really mean? So for me to understand this, and therefore I'm sharing it with you, I'm actually wanting to take it back and read the passages that come before it. Jesus calls Matthew. This is from verse 9. Jesus left that place, and as he walked along, he saw a tax collector named Matthew sitting in his office. He said to him, "Follow me." Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having a meal in Matthew's home, many tax collectors and other outcasts came and joined Jesus and his disciples at the table. Some Pharisees saw this and asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with such people?" Jesus heard them and answered, "People who are well do not need a doctor, but only those who are sick. Go and find out what is meant by the scripture that says, 'It is kindness that I want, not animal sacrifices.' I have not come to call respectable people, but outcasts." So welcome to the team of outcasts. This to me highlights, and therefore gives me a sense as to what that new wineskin and old wineskin means, is that Jesus was eating. First of all, he meets Matthew and then goes and has dinner at his place. Now really, who wants to go and have dinner with a tax collector, much less Matthew, who no doubt had a reputation for not being the nicest person and trying to get more money from everybody? So he goes and eats at his place. But then there's actually more tax collectors there and outcasts. And really, why do you want to go and hang out with these people? You're really walking on the wild side if you do that. And his disciples were questioned by the Pharisees. Now, I think by now we need to have an understanding if anything that's Pharisaical, anything that is related to the Pharisees, was not full of love, care, compassion, looking out for anybody. It was, these are the rules and you've broken them. And these are the consequences. Everything was black and white. And this is, if you've done this, then that's what happens. And you don't go and hang out with those people because you're going to be like them too. You're going to get tarnished, your reputation's going down, you're not going to make any progress in life if you hang out with those people. So the Pharisees are therefore asking Jesus' disciples, why does your teacher sit and eat with these people? Thankfully, Jesus heard and responded. And in there we see, it is kindness that I want, not animal sacrifices. So I think here we're starting to get a glimpse that the Pharisees were really onto rules and regulations, and this is what you do and this is how you go about it. It's so black and white, lacking love, care, compassion. Jesus is actually coming, and it appears to be in such a contrast. He's bringing in the love, the care, the kindness, the compassion. And it's not just, we're going to love everybody and turn a blind eye. As we well know throughout the New Testament, and especially throughout the Gospels, Jesus was not just saying, she'll be right. He was loving people as he corrected them and gave what we call constructive criticism. But he did it with love and care and compassion, as we know with the woman accused of adultery. He didn't give her a lecture. He didn't say, you should do this again, and what have you done, and what's your history? He just said, go, don't do it again. So we start to get a sense of the kindness coming in, which obviously was in stark contrast to the Pharisees. Straight after this passage is the question about fasting. Then the followers of John the Baptist came to Jesus, asking, why is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples don't fast at all? Jesus answered, do you expect the guests at a wedding party to be sad as long as the bridegroom is with them? Of course not. But the day will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. Straight away we've got the Pharisees in there, so maybe a little highlight. Anything the Pharisees do, you just don't do. I think that's possibly a fair guide. But again, Jesus is in contrast to what the Pharisees were saying. You're meant to be fasting, and you're meant to fast at this time and for this length of time and in this way and in this format. And if you're not fasting, well, really, what are you doing? You're wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Really, if you weren't abiding by these, you're wrong. And that doesn't help much with your self-esteem or your sense of, hey, I can get myself out of this. Hey, and if stuff happens to you, we all have life happen to us. Irrespective if we think we're doing the right call, making the right decisions on a daily basis, stuff happens to us. Someone runs into our car when we're sitting at the lights, abiding by the road rules, etc. Lots of things happen, and it was not you that created it. So the Pharisees were making no allowance for any of these sorts of things. So, fasting. If Jesus is there, if you are at a wedding, if you are at a festival time, if you have a time of celebration, go for it. Enjoy. And these people, probably without knowing it, did not know that Jesus was not going to be with them for much longer in that physical format. But yeah. And I mean, it was interesting here, even the followers of John the Baptist were asking that too. So I think here we're getting another sense of what these new and old wineskins and patching up old clothes is. So that whole of Matthew, before the new wineskins, old wineskins, we're talking about the calling of Matthew, who's a tax collector. He dines there with outcasts and with other tax collectors. The Pharisees are questioning. They're questioning in both those occasions. And even John's followers are questioning about the fasting. These are all related to rules and regulations. Now, we have laws of the land to keep us safe. Don't drive over a particular speed. Stop at a red light. And all those sorts of things. Don't steal money. And we've got the 10 Commandments there. But somehow it's gone beyond just following this. It's actually black and white rules and regulations. And if you're not abiding by it, then you're out on your ear and we don't care for you. And I'm not quite sure how you're meant to, get yourself back on your feet. But the Pharisees certainly weren't there to help you. But Jesus was. And thankfully, for us, Jesus dying on the cross and then rising again brings us this new change, this new season for us. An example. There are heaps and heaps of examples. Heaps of examples. And I'll explain a little bit later as to why I've chosen Chuck Colson to talk. But for those of you who are heaps younger than me, and even me, I'm not overly 100% sure on the fine detail, but I do know this was a guy who was born in 1931 and he died in 2012. But he was working with President Nixon at the time. He was a lawyer, he was on his way up, he was ladder climbing, he was doing really well for himself. But he was part of what's called the Watergate affair. And I know there'll be people out there who know more about that than I do. I just know it wasn't a good thing. From my readings and the political wheelings and dealings and all that sort of thing, it wasn't good. And he got caught up in that. And as the President Nixon and those close to him were being accused and charged, and there was much discussion and media and all that sort of thing, 1973, a friend of his gave him a copy of C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity book. Chuck Colson was really taken by this, and no doubt after a lot of discussion and seeking of others, he actually became a Christian. He ended up pleading guilty. He became a Christian, and yet all the court proceedings are going to deal with all this. He decided to plead guilty. So he's a Christian, but he obviously knows what he's been doing. Under the radar hasn't been right, but he's become a Christian now. So he chooses to face the music, and he pleads guilty to obstruction of justice, and he ends up getting 7 months in prison in 1974. So he became a Christian in 73 and then was in prison for about 7 months in 74. While he was in prison as a Christian, he realised that the situation there with prisoners, let's put in tax collectors and outcasts equivalent, was not good. And what hope was there for anyone if they do their time, they do the crime, they pay their time, and then they come out and then what? They are outcasts. Outcasts personified. How do you then go and get a job? And this would still continue in this day and age too. But from that, he created what was called prison fellowship. And in 1979, it actually became Prison Fellowship International as it spread around the world. So here we have a person who is highlighting new seasons. He's doing what he's doing, he gets himself into trouble, he's ladder climbing, he's got a family and all this sort of thing. No doubt he's got stacks of money. He's ending up in the White House. Seems pretty impressive. But he also gets caught up in evil, nasty stuff, then becomes a Christian. And the new season kicks in. He steps up and admits to what he's done. But from that comes prison fellowship, which is still going today. And in 2012, he died. Now, he actually did heaps and heaps of other things. If you go and look him up, there's a list of things he's done, and he's tried to reconcile different Christian denominations and to try and bridge whatever antagonism there was at the time, and he's written heaps of books. New season. I just want to show a couple of quotes. The first one, whatever good I may have done is because God saw fit to reach into the depths of Watergate and convert a broken sinner. So, whatever you're going through, hopefully it's not as bad as Watergate. It's not going to be in the media. It's not going to be there for everybody to know. But if he can reach that point, so can you and so can I. New seasons can start. This is a quote that I saw recently. It was at the time of Easter. And this really struck me, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on to read it, and you probably do too, because there's so many words there. But I know the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me. How? Because 12 men testified they had seen Jesus raised from the dead. Then they proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Everyone was beaten, tortured, stoned, and put in prison. They would not have endured that if it weren't true. Watergate embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, and they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. You're telling me 12 apostles could keep alive for 40 years? Absolutely impossible. So, me knowing a little bit about Chuck Colson, when I saw this, I thought, man, you have, I don't know how many words are there, but you have just so succinctly expressed what our faith is about. And it was Gary on Easter Sunday, I think it was, gave a bit of an apologetics take on the resurrection. And he was obviously basing it on historical documents and stuff that was said and done many, many, many years ago. But for someone like Chuck Colson in the early 2000s to be summarising it all in that statement, and from his experience, I think, you're just backing it all up. Amen. Preach it, brother. He's obviously died now, so he's preaching in heaven, and good on him. But he's left lots and lots of books and lots of quotes, and he's started Prison Fellowship and then into International. So this, for me, was where New Seasons was kicking in. When we know Jesus, we start a new season. And some of us need to start that daily. So, this sense of the dogs shaking off the water, what I want to encourage you guys to do is that Jesus came to make all things new, and on a daily basis. Some of us have experienced it and continue where we have been lifted out of a situation like Chuck Colson was. He's managed to turn his life around and go to great heights in areas that he never dreamt of. So some of us are going to have those sorts of things where we've been in such a valley and we end up on such a mountain, such a contrast. I guess to a lesser extent, it's not quite as traumatic as that, but the fact that Gary and I are where we are this year, that was not on my horizon, not on my radar, not on my bucket list, not on my, nothing. And yet, here we are. And you guys are so gracious to welcome us and allow us to be there and to encourage us. So thank you for that. But also on a daily basis, if there is, I've got to go to work tomorrow, or I've got to do this, or I've got to somehow find the money to pay that bill, or I've got a medical appointment, or I've got to go and approach the teacher about my recalcitrant children who aren't doing their homework, or whatever. It's as God came to make all things new. And it doesn't have to be big things like Chuck Colson. It can be the little things like, how do we get through tomorrow? How do we get through the day after? How do we deal with illness or sickness, or the car's got crashed and we're down a car sort of thing. So, like those dogs, I'd like to encourage you to shake off your blues, shake off your worries, hand them to God, and let's all create a new season. Because with Jesus, that's what he's come for. And that's why when we get Jesus, we're our old wineskins, we don't know Jesus, whatever. You know Jesus, you are now a new wineskin. So you are the new wineskin. Okay? And you have changed. You have changed. For some people, it might be obvious, and people are going to see there's an extra bit of pep in your step, or you've got an extra inner joy or peace or something. But even if nobody else notices, you will notice. You will feel that sense of peace, that sense of calm, that sense that you are not doing what you're doing alone. So, go shaking off your old wineskin and know that you are a beautiful new wineskin. All of you are new wineskins. You are new jackets. You are new coats. Imagine the best coat you like and pretend you're wearing it, because that's you. And go out knowing that you have Jesus walking with you and that you have a new season starting daily.